Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Hugh Daniels. I'm a member of the North American CEM Review Commission. I'm in the middle of my third year of the first term on the commission, and I'm the one that's going to spend a little time with you today talking about the training, letters of reference, exam, and certification fees section of the CEM AEM program. You do have the ability to ask questions, but not directly of me. If you will write those in the dashboard and the go to webinar function, it's usually on the right of your screen or across the top. When we get to the end, I will answer just as many of those as we can, and then the IAEM CEM staff will also be keeping track of all of those and being able to pull those together to go with the webinar in the future. The webinar is being recorded. So with that, we'll get started here. I currently work in my day job as the emergency manager for Park City, Utah. And there's nothing more fun than AEM and CEM applications to review. So let's start off with certification training. One of the larger parts of your application, you're required to have 100 contact hours of emergency management and 100 contact hours of general management, and that all must be within 10 years. So if you have a course that you took 11 years ago, that will not get counted if you've added that into your application. One of the key points of this is that there is no more than 25 hours in a single topic or a single subject. So when you're entering this into your application, and we'll see an example of that in a second, you need to put what subject or topic that course was. So if it was IS 100, so it was an incident management course, your subject or topic would be incident management. And if you took an ICS 300 course, that one would also be incident management. If you did one on volunteers, then your topic or subject would be volunteers. But you cannot have more than 25 hours in any single topic in either general management or emergency management. The key to most of the application is independent validation, and a couple of cautions. One is please read the directions carefully in the application as you fill it out. There's tons of information there. It's really specific, and many of the errors that would get an application returned to you for more information, you could get around by just carefully reading the directions and following them exactly. As far as validating your training, commissioners basically look at three things. First is a completion certificate. So if you have a completion certificate, whether it's an online IS course or a classroom course, most certificates have the number of hours listed on them. And it's usually a CE or a CU, and 0.1 is an hour, 1.0 is 10 hours. Those are the hours that we're going to give you credit for. So first thing we're going to look at is that certificate. Certificate trumps everything else. So whatever the hours are on the certificate, those are the ones you're going to get credit for. If your certificate does not have hours, then we're going to look at the IEM training allocation table and try to determine hours from that. The training allocation table sometimes is a little hard to find on the IAEM site, but it is referenced in the application as well. I'm going to take just a brief detour off the PowerPoint to go to the IEM website. If you go to certification, down to Resource Center, it's going to take you to this page. And if you scroll down to links to additional resource documents, you will find the sample allocation training tables. If you click on that, it gives the tables for various countries or as a group. When you click on that, if you clicked on that, you'd get the USA table, which has a cover letter which explains everything the same as far as topics. And then it lists many, many, many of the acceptable courses. But I will tell you that there are hundreds and hundreds, probably it's better to say thousands and thousands of courses available out in emergency management these days. So it's everything from classroom B courses and online IS courses. But you'll note it lists the course number, the course title, and the allowable hours, and whether it's allocated to emergency management, general management, or either. If it's an either, you can put it into either of those categories. You cannot put it into both of those categories. And this goes all the way for pages and pages and pages, E-courses, I-courses, and yet you will still find courses that you've taken that are not in the allocation table, in which case the commissioners are going to need to see a course syllabus for training not listed. So you need to provide something that shows like the agenda or the syllabus or what is covered in the course, so the commissioner can figure out if it is an emergency management course or a general management course. And you must document or validate that you actually took the course. If you just send us a syllabus, but there's no proof that you actually completed the course, you will not get credit for that. So you need validation of the course syllabus, and then we need to know how many hours. And you don't get credit for lunch and for breaks. So generally, most 8-hour courses you're going to get 6 hours for, unless you can prove through the agenda that it was more than that in a single day. So for proving general management and emergency management, no more than 25 hours in a single topic. You've got to validate it either through a certificate or through a syllabus, and that needs to be independent. If you attended a course that you didn't get a certificate for, having someone validate that you were there, whether it's a supervisor or an instructor, but it needs to be something that is independent, third party, and it should be on preferably letterhead and signed. So if you're going to use a document to prove this, and it's a Word document that is a plain Word document that anybody could type up that has no signature, the commissioners are not going to allow that, and that might get kicked back to you if you didn't have the correct number of hours. So both AEMs and CEMs must have their 100 hours of training. Couple of reminders that you do have to have a bachelor's degree as part of your application, and if your bachelor's degree is in emergency management, you cannot double dip. You cannot use courses from your emergency management degree towards the training section. There is an exception to that, and that is if your emergency management degree is a bachelor's or a second bachelor's or a higher degree, such as a master's in emergency management, you may have to document fewer than 100 hours of emergency management training, but you still have to provide your 100 hours of general management training. That said, you can use some of your master's or a PhD degree or subsequent bachelor's degrees to be used for general management training. And that can go back further than 10 years. My example was I had a MBA, and it was probably 16 or 17 years before I applied for my CEM. I was able to go back to that, get a transcript from the college that listed the courses, but then I had to do some research and find a syllabus for each of those courses to back up my attendance. So the transcript showed that I completed that course, but it didn't explain that course, so then I had to go back and find the syllabus for it and upload all of those into my application to justify that training. If you are using a baccalaureate degree or higher in emergency management, towards those 100 classroom hours, there is a table, and it is in the application and in the directions on the website of how many emergency management hours you needed. So if you've taken that, if you've gotten your degree in 0 to 3 years, you don't have to put in any emergency management training. You do have to put in a copy of your diploma or transcript that showed you got that degree. If it's been 3, then you're 24, 40 on up until, if it's been 7 or more, you do still have to put in that 100 hours. The same reminder, watch double dipping. If you only have a single degree and it's in emergency management, you can't use it for your degree requirement and for your training requirement. You'll have to have other training to satisfy that. And if you're trying to equate semester hours, basically a semester hour is 1.5 quarter hours, so that's 15 classroom hours towards certification. A lot of courses are 3 semester hours, which means they're 45 hours. So you would have credit for 45 hours. But remember, it's only 25 hours per subject. So if you had a class and you had 45 hours and you put 45 hours in your application, the commissioners that are reviewing your application are going to give you 25 hours max for any of those subjects. Or if subjects add up. For instance, you put in ICS 300, which is usually a 16-hour course, and you put in ICS 400, which is usually a 14-hour course, and the topic was ICS, so you put one in for 16 hours and you put the other in for 14 hours. That adds up to 30 hours, so the commissioners will only give you a total of 25 hours for those 2 courses combined. So just remember that as you're putting your courses in and choosing the topics of those, that they're matching up. And the commissioners are pretty bright. If you call an ICS 300 course something else than incident command, say it's let's say mass casualty or volunteer services or something, the commissioners know what an ICS 300 course is, and you're not going to get credit for that in another topic. They will add those up together. So, moving on. The topics for emergency management and general management training are many, but they do have to be tied to emergency management or general management. So the sources are all over the place. Certainly if you go to the FEMA website, I can't even remember how many IS courses that there are anymore, but I'm sure we're in the 700 or 800 range. Some of those would be emergency management related, some would be general management, and some could be emergency management or general management. So there are lots of courses available through the federal agencies. Most of our state and local agencies, either through state associations or state divisions or departments of emergency management or homeland security, do classroom programs that are available to you. They can be through colleges that are regionally accredited. Occasionally there's vendor-sponsored ones. Military programs have a bunch. A number of VOADs and NOADs have courses. All of those are legitimate sources for training. When you get into the topics and the related disciplines, just remember that they must be substantially related to emergency management. And a couple of examples would be, if you look at the second one down at criminal justice and law enforcement, if you're going to a course that's on driving under the influence, and you've got 6 hours credit and you put that in as an emergency management course, that would be seen as a specific technical course in law enforcement that is not emergency management related. Likewise, if you were down in fire technology and you had a course that was purely aimed at fire suppression and didn't have components of emergency management in it, then that would be seen as a technical course that is fire related and not an emergency management course. Now, if that course had a whole lot to do with incident command, or it was all targeted at incident command, then that does fit into emergency management and that would be allowed. Just a few more running down the list. Just remember that it's got to have that emergency management component. So remember those pillars of emergency management. General management, it's broader, and we're thinking just about, okay, how do you manage your office? How do you manage people? How do you manage operations? How do you manage organizations? So that includes human resources and executive and management development, ethics, strategical and tactical planning, volunteer resources. So on this set of 100 hours, it's a broader look at general management and not as focused in the profession of emergency management. This is what the form looks like if you haven't seen it already in your application. Again, the lists are not inclusive. You're going to add Each line you're going to put in whatever that course is, and you're going to put in the subject area, you're going to put in the title, you're going to put in the total hours that you believe that you should receive for those based on either that certificate that has hours or on a syllabus and agenda with proof of attending that course. And you may have 4, all with 25 hours of my apology, it's Wednesday and it's time for NOAA to do their weather checks on my weather radio. Or you could have many, many courses listed. Make sure, though, that you do remember to upload copies of your certificates. PDFs are the best, or transcripts. If you have a transcript from FEMA for IS courses, that's certainly acceptable. But the commissioners are going to check every single one of those. One of the most common mistakes is uploading the wrong certificate for the course that you put in on that line. So you put in an IS 100 course and you uploaded the certificate for I0001, emergency management. You're not going to get, obviously, credit for that because they don't match up. So make sure you've got the right certificate with the right course that's on those lines, and make sure you regularly save everything when you're working on your application. Nothing worse than not saving anything and then like having your computer crash or the power go out and have to start all over again. If you wanted to, you could put 100 courses that were all 1 hour each, but you'll not make any friends amongst the commission. The other is, do you have to have more than 100? All you have to have is 100 courses that have validation, 100 hours of validation and however many courses you put in. My suggestion to you is that you might want to put in about 10% more. So you might want to have maybe 110 hours. Just in case one of those courses that you thought you were going to get 10 hours for, you only got 6 hours for, or one of those courses you had the wrong certificate in it, or it was an unacceptable syllabus, or you didn't have independent validation. We're looking for that 100 total. But it's your call. What we don't want to see is 200%. So please don't put 200 hours in each section for us to go through to try and figure that out. Commissioners do have the ability to move things around a little. We definitely follow the rules on evaluating applications. We don't bend those. But if you had 115 hours of emergency management training and some of that also was good for general management and you were short a couple of hours in your general management training, we do have the ability to move that. You wouldn't know that. You don't happen to know that, but commissioners do have that leeway. So that's the benefit sometimes of just having a little bit extra in each of the columns. General management is pretty much the same thing. You still have to have subject areas. You still have to have the same validation that you did in emergency management. And the application will allow you to add those hours. It has a little button and it'll add them all up for you. Letters of reference. This changed recently, and we used to require 3 written letters of reference. That's changed to 1 professional letter of reference, and it must be the candidate's current supervisor, and it should attest to your work, that you've worked for X number of dates in that position. Elsewhere in the application is going to ask for a job description for you, which should be on letterhead professional from your agency. Again, not a blank piece of paper, but from your current supervisor, and also that you are involved in comprehensive emergency management for your agency or organization. So you're doing preparedness, prevention, response, recovery, and mitigation, an all-around emergency manager. That should be on letterhead, it should be dated, and that should be signed. You can have 2 more letters of reference. You have to put in individuals that we may contact for 2 more, so you're going to need 3 sets of individuals for references. Only 1 has to be written. That's from your current supervisor. However, for the other 2, if you so decide, you can upload written references from your other 2. Again, it's your choice. It's not required. The only requirement is that you put in the contact information for 3, and you have that one written one. The benefit, I'll tell you, of adding 2 others that are written is periodically, as a commissioner, when we read those, we find information in those letters that help us validate other things in your application, where we may not have had a validation for something in another part of the application. We'll read a reference letter, and they say, well, I was involved with candidate X in an exercise, and he served as the manager for the Emergency Operations Center. Well, we didn't see that before and earlier in the application. Now we can do some other validation. So there is some benefit to that, but it's purely your choice. Scanned PDF of a submitted letter is by far the best. If you do not have a direct supervisor, it could be an elected official. If you're working in a county government or a smaller jurisdiction or a special service district, or a board or executive director, it could be a current CM that's a colleague. All of those may be acceptable substitutes. And again, both for AEMs and CEMs. And this is exactly what it's going to tell you in the application as far as what that requirement is, what that first reference needs to be, and what the other ones need to be as well. Note, for past supervisors within 7 years, there's a number of different people that would qualify as references. Those that don't qualify are subordinates, former students, then friends, relatives, or neighbors. This is exactly what the reference form is. Note at the bottom, it's where you're going to click to upload your files. Again, PDFs are the best thing to put in. Please try to put your PDFs in the correct direction. It's kind of hard for commissions to look at them sideways and upside down, but trust us, we do it. So we will do everything we can to help you be successful if you can get us all the correct information in your application. So the exam. Part of the application is completing the certification exam. It's 100 multiple choice questions. You must have 75 correct or better to pass the exam. There are country-specific exams for Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United States, and then there's an international exam for all the other practitioners. Difference has to do with some emergency management specifics for those countries. You can do your exam before you do your application, or you can do your application before you do your exam. But when you submit your application or you've taken your exam and submit it, the clock starts, and you have 1 year to complete everything and pay your fee. You're going to have to pay your fee to take your exam. You're going to have to pay your fee to submit your application. But that starts the clock. And I've had colleagues that have taken their exam and then have called me about 10 days before the year is up and asked if there's any way they could get their application finished. To which I usually say, yep, but you're going to have to sit down and spend some time and really hit it hard for the next few days to get it in before it expires. On the exam, you can take it a second time if you don't pass. There is tons and tons of information and examples on the IEM website. If you go under the certification tab and get into the exam, giving you ideas of what types of questions are on there, sample questions, there's study guide. IEM also has a preparatory course that's available throughout the year that you can go to. It does have an additional fee where the instructor goes through all those details. Currently, the exam is done in person and on paper. We will be moving to an online exam, hopefully in the coming year. However, it still must be proctored. In other words, someone has to sit there with you when you take the exam. They're given throughout the year. Often they're done in addition to state annual conventions or conferences. It's done at the IAEM National Conference this year, which will be in October in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We'll also be doing the preparatory course. When I did mine, I just went to a testing center at a local university You arrange for the test to be sent from IEM headquarters to the testing center. They proctor it, you take it, they put it in the envelope, they send it back. The commissioners can proctor exams, IEM board members can proctor exams, any independent faculty, military training centers, state training coordinators. So there's a number of options to take your exam either individually or with another group. I do recommend you go through that study guide brochure, look through all the information it has on giving you suggestions on doing the exam. The exam isn't easy. The exam isn't hard. If you're up to date on your emergency management, you've been active in your emergency management training and your general management training, and you spend a little time ahead of time doing some research by using all the information that is available to you through the IEM CEM website. So fees as of January 2016, the application fee, which includes the exam or vice versa, for an IEM member is $395. If you're a non-member, the fee is $595. Doesn't take a whole lot of math at the current dues rate of $190 that if you become a member and use the member rate, you just saved yourself $10 off the $595. Plus you have all the benefits of IEM the rest of the year as a full member. Recertification and the actual details of recertification are handled in another webinar, but the fees for that are $250 or $325 if you're a non-member. Recertification is every 5 years, and that is basically just your training, and that is a sliding scale depending on how long you've been a member and your professional contributions. But those are the current fees. Those do have to be paid before you take your exam, and if you haven't taken your exam, with your application being submitted. Some of the pitfalls. So incomplete, sloppy, out of order applications. It's hard to get your applications out of order now that they're online. It was worse when they were all paper applications. But you can get things in the wrong spot or upload them in the wrong spot. Incomplete and sloppy is really tough on commissioners, and it potentially is going to get your application sent back if you don't meet the requirements throughout it. I'll give you an example, an essay that recently was turned in that was still in track form. In other words, it had comments in the margins. It had words that had been stricken out. There were sentences. It was in multicolors. You really could not even tell what the applicant's final essay was looking at. That's just not paying attention and accepting all of your track changes, rereading it, and then uploading the final document. It's not scanning things correctly, so they're cut off. Just some real basic things of taking your time and looking at it. Remember, third-party independent validation on everything. So if you have a letter of validation and it's not signed or it's not independent of you, that one's not going to be accepted. Documentation that's not on letterhead, in other words, documentation that looks like anybody could have typed it up on a Word document. Often they don't have dates, they don't have signatures, sometimes not even names at the end. They just attest to the candidate doing something. You've got to have that independent validation. I mentioned several times the 25 hours per topic area when we're doing our emergency management and general management training. You may not double dip. In other words, you can't count the same accomplishment twice. Often happens in your professional contributions, which are covered in another webinar, but you can't use one thing you did in one place. An example might be you did a speaking engagement to a group, and then that group gave you an award for doing that speaking engagement. So those would need to be two separate things. You can't use that same thing twice. Not reviewing list of resources, recommended publications, as well as country-specific resources used to make up the exam within the study guide. Just mentioned that one. If you go through all of that, It's not going to be tough for you. The exam, you have 2 hours to take the exam, and I've offered proctored those, and some people are out of there in an hour, and some are out of there in 2 hours. We don't care. You have all that time in the world to do it. If you do your research, if you read the publications, if you look at the resources throughout the application and throughout the website, you're going to be in good shape in getting your application approved. We do now have a featured mentor program. That's people that have already gotten their CEMs that are interested in helping you get your CEM, and that is available on the website. You can see the URL down there, iem.com/mentors.cfm. Other mentors that are available are CEM commissioners. You don't have to be a featured mentor to be a mentor for others. You do have to fill out a form and submit it to IAEM headquarters if you want to be a mentor. So that would also be available for a professional contribution for you later in your recertification, for instance. The commissioners, there's 2 commissioners that review applications. It's a blind review. Commissioners may contact you for small minor things that you could easily fix. It doesn't mean that automatically means your application will be successful, but if we were going through your training, for instance, and you had the wrong certificate in, but everything else was fine, the commissioners have the ability to contact you and give you a day or two to get the correct document reloaded up into your application. You can never accept anything by email. Always has to be done through your application. And if you change your application, then other things disappear and the new things come in place. So make sure everything, when you upload, is there where you need it. And for information, here's all the contact information for the commission. Everything basically is on the IEM.com website. If you go to the certification tab, information on the featured mentor program. And with that, I will see what questions we have in the panel, and I will answer questions for you. Question is, you must have a Bachelor of Science in Emergency Management, ? I have a Master's of Science in Disaster Management and a post-MBA. Will my degree be accepted? As far as the degree requirement, it is any bachelor's degree of any type. So it can be a Bachelor's of Arts, it can be a Bachelor's of Philosophy, Social Work. So for the degree requirement, which we didn't talk about in this webinar, it's in another one, but for that actual degree requirement, it's any Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science from an accredited university. If you're going to use that degree for emergency management training, then it's going to have to be an emergency management related degree. So that's an emergency management might be it, but if it's one in disaster management, the commissioners are going to want to look at the course titles and the syllabuses to see if they have an emergency management nexus, that they're tied to emergency management and that they haven't gone off on some other track. Generally, I would say, yeah, probably that one was going to be okay, but we would take a look at that. Can college coursework be used as part of this training? If so, how many hours each semester unit worth? So semester units, basically 1 hour semester unit is 15 hours of training. Most semester courses are 3 semester hours, which would be 45 hours. That is listed in the application, that formula, and in the instructions. Yes, you can use college courses, particularly they tend to fit in general management, but you may have taken a college course that's emergency management related, and yes, that may be used as training. However, again, you've got to show that you actually took and passed the course, and you've got to provide a syllabus that outlines what the course was about. Do law degrees count towards management? Law degrees would not count towards emergency management, but it might have some classes in your law degree that would work for general management. If you look at those lists of topics of general management courses, I would guess that there's either some prereqs or undergraduate courses that probably are general management related, or our general business law or general business management that would qualify for general management. Without looking at syllabuses, my guess is there's probably not many that would meet emergency management, but maybe. If we don't have a certificate for a FEMA course, can we use a transcript from EMI? Yes. For those of you who don't know, if you don't have certificates, you may send a request into FEMA that goes to the Emergency Management Institute, and they will return a transcript that shows all of the courses that you have taken that is in their system. So it would include all the IS courses that you've taken online. It would also include E courses and L courses that you might have taken at EMI. It does not cover the ones that you took probably, or that you did take like in a state division of emergency management. So for instance, in my case in Utah, if I went down to the state division of emergency management and I took G404, I would get a certificate from the state, and it would hopefully have the number of hours on it. If not, I could go to the allocation table. However, that would not be in the FEMA transcript. But yes, a FEMA transcript is as good as a certificate because it also lists the number of hours. And remember, it's those number of hours listed on that transcript that you get credit for, not necessarily the ones in the allocation table. They don't always match up. So certificates win, then allocation table. So if a certificate says 6 hours and the allocation table says 10, you're going to get 6, not 10. Next question. Sorry, I got to scroll a little bit. Can your letter documenting your work experience verification also be applied as support for the specific requirements, e.g., instead of having a previous supervisor write that I worked there on dates on one letter and then another letter attesting to the fact that I participated in an exercise? Yes. So if you're getting a letter from your supervisor that attests to the dates you've worked for the organization, and you're also using that for him to validate what you participated in the exercise, if you put that all in there, if it's all in one letter, that's acceptable. I'll tell you what will help the commissioners, though. Upload that letter twice. Upload it in your validation for like your exercise requirement, and then upload it again for your reference. Because what happens is a commissioner will go through and he won't have validation for your exercise, and he won't allow it, and then he'll later find that supervisor's letter that has more information in it, and he'll have to go back up through the application and reverse that. We do that all the time. It's easier for us if you just upload it both times so we see it. But yes, you can put more than one set of validation in a single letter coming from your supervisor. And any more? Let me go here. EM training on the subject of relatedness to emergency management. How about Homeland Security courses, as it seems that many higher education places seem to lump them with EM? Again, it depends on the course, and you're right. There's a lot of degrees in emergency management and Homeland Security. There's degrees in emergency management that are more targeted to managing law enforcement and fire service operations than emergency management as we generally know it with the 5 pillars. But they have components in them that are emergency management related. So on those, it generally depends on the course and, again, the syllabus. So if you're going to submit something with just the name of the course and not have any backup that it's emergency management related, then it makes it very difficult for a commissioner to accept that. So we just ask you to go a little bit further in finding a transcript, looking at it, or finding that syllabus, looking at it and saying, okay, yeah, this talks about recovery and mitigation and not just terrorism. And that's not that a course about terrorism wouldn't count, because terrorism is obviously part of emergency management. But if the entire degree was all focused on that, you'd be over your 25 hours pretty quickly. Can you explain how FEMA EMI National Emergency Management, oh, I'm sorry, that one just moved. Let's see if I'm up to date here. Okay. Can you explain how the FEMA EMI National Emergency Management Advanced Academy counts for CEM qualifications. So the basic academy, the advanced academy, and the executive academy all have hours involved, obviously, in taking those courses. If you go to the allocation table, they're listed in two places. One place they're listed as the academy. The other place they're listed as individual courses. For instance, in the advanced academy, each of your weeks has its own course designation. The same is true for the executive academy. And next to that, you'll find a mixture of number of hours that are allowed both for emergency management and general management. If you go farther down into the table, you'll find one that says the Advanced Academy, and it will list all the topics that were discussed in the Advanced Academy. It will tell you the total number of hours available between emergency management and general management, and then you must pick out the topic and pick out the number of hours from those totals and list those on your application. So all of those are available to be used for your emergency management and general management training. You just have to get in there, find the topics that are allowed and the total number of hours allowed, remembering not more than 25 hours on a single subject. I have the FEMA Primary and Master Professional Continuity Practitioner certificates that entail several courses. Should I list out each course necessary for the completion of the certificate or just the overall certificate? Go into the sample allocation table, and those are in there as well, and it'll give you your options. Remember, it depends on whether just emergency training, general management training, or they can be both, and you can choose which ones you want those to go into. But I am positive that those are in the allocation table, and those will help you out. I'm scrolling down. If you are the owner of a business, who qualifies as a general management reference? I'm not exactly sure the question of whether your question is about general management training or whether references towards emergency management. I'm guessing maybe we're talking about being a consultant in emergency management, in which case you're going to need another CEM who's familiar with you and your business, or I would suggest potentially a client who would do a reference for you, preferably outside. I mean, that direct connection between a client and consultant starts to get a little iffy. There are certainly ways to do it. That might be a question to send off to the CEM info email, ceminfo@iaem.com, and that'll go to the CEM Executive Board to review and come back to you with some examples. So there's ways to do it, and we've had people do it. So if I would suggest that one's probably an email into the info line and to get some feedback from the commission. I am not currently employed. However, I am a volunteer for the American Red Cross for the Disaster Active Team. Can I obtain a reference letter from that supervisor? You may not only get a reference letter from that supervisor or from any of the volunteer organizations active in disasters, but the hours you have spent, whether you're a full-time volunteer or a part-time volunteer, they must be validated, can go through your 3 years full-time emergency management experience. And those can all be added up. Again, you got to validate each one. So if you had a year with one employer and a year working for the Red Cross and a year with someone else, those will all need independent validation. But yeah, working for the Red Cross or the Salvation Army or any of the faith-based groups, both the hours that you work and references can come from those organizations. Letters from HR departments on corporate letterhead stating that I was employed as their emergency manager from date to date. Good. Yes, that works. And you'll also want the job description because that will be required in the application as well. It's not required in the reference section, but it's required up at the top part of the application. So yep, HR works. Make sure they're on letterhead and somebody's initials that are signed it. If my current position is not an emergency management position, but I have 5 years prior to this in emergency management, how will the letter from my current supervisor be counted? You're going to see if you're going to have to find someone from your previous employer who can attest to it, as well as validate those 5 prior years in emergency that you were in comprehensive emergency management. Sometimes supervisors are no longer available, but someone's available in the organization that knew you, HR department, elected official. If you run through all of those and you run out of options, that's another one that I would email the question to ceminfo@aem.com because we have a number of people who have been doing this for years and we'll have an answer for you on who to hunt down to get you your letter. And if your current supervisor has actual knowledge of that emergency management time and can actually verify you did that, that would be fine. But they would have to have that actual independent knowledge that you performed that job for X dates at X level and was comprehensive emergency management. We're winding down here. The website says a baccalaureate degree in emergency management reduces the experience requirement depending on how current the degree and ways the emergency management training is earned very recently. How much experience time does the degree waive? 1 year. It takes it from 3 years to 2 years. That's in the application and is outlined both in the application and in the resource center on the website. Can teaching in an emergency management program count towards professional experience? Maybe. And I'm sorry I have to give you a maybe on that one. What we're looking at professional experience, and again, that's outside this webinar, but briefly is comprehensive emergency management experience at all levels. So if you're an educator, but you're educating within a narrow scope, and so you're not doing any mitigation or not doing any response, then you're not going to be able to meet that comprehensive part of it. However, if you're an educator and you're hitting all those parts, or you've been actively in all those parts, or can tie your teaching experience in with field experience with another organization or entity, then that's possible. So that one would take a little bit of work and validating, and once again might be worth an email with your exact specifics. How do you quantify work experience in emergency management? Full-time comprehensive emergency management for 3 years is the requirement in the application. So the quantity is 3 full-time years. If you look at the application, it gives you the number of hours. Again, we're outside our webinar today, and then it's got to be validated by one or more of your employers or supervisors. And they just need to say that, yeah, you were involved in it all. You just didn't sit and write plans, but you did plans and you helped with prevention and you were involved in a response and you've been trained in mitigation. We're looking for well-rounded, comprehensive emergency managers. I have worked as an adjunct instructor for a community college and teach EMT classes. Would any of that count towards 3 years of full-time job? If all you're teaching is emergency medical technicians, no. If you're teaching broader emergency management courses, then we're back to the discussion I just had before, but we're still looking for you working as a comprehensive emergency manager with all of those pillars. So probably part of it might be, but if all you've been doing is teaching EMTs, no. Do conferences and symposiums count towards general management or emergency management training? They can, yes. But if you use them for that, then you cannot use them in professional contributions as a conference. So if you go to the IEM conference, you could use that either as attending a conference for professional contributions, again, a different webinar, or you could use it towards training, but you would need to pull out the exact training it was. So you would have to show on the, you'd have to show the write-up from the conference guide, so it would have to have a syllabus. You would have to have proof of attendance. The IEM conference is a little tougher because they lump attendance in because it's used mostly for conferences, but if you went to your state conference and you could show the agenda with a syllabus for each speaker, and the speaker spoke for an hour, and you can get someone to validate that you were there for that conference, whether it's a name tag or a letter from the association secretary or something, yep, all of that could go in. You just have to remember to upload all those pieces that validate it, explain what it was, and how many hours. If an emergency management master's level course has multiple components such as HC, mitigation response, etc., can I divide each class into the hours versus the entire course into the particular area? Yes. Usually the option is, and it depends. I mean, if you take the course and it's got a bunch of different topics in different classes, then you can split those up any way you want based on the topic and the number of hours. Some of the courses you'll see in the allocation table, it'll just give the whole course name and a total number of hours, and either as E or G, and you can do it that way. Just depends on the course. So HC is going to be all topics, going to be all exercises. And it's going to be over 25 hours, so you wouldn't be able to put in for any other exercise ones, as an example. Are MGT level courses eligible for training allocation from NDPC organizations other than EMI? Yes. And if you go through the allocation table, you'll see some MGT courses in there from various organizations. A bunch of them are from TEACS, but there's other ones as well from the coordination groups. Not all of them are in there, so if they're not all in there, you'll still need your certificate, you'll need your hours, and you'll need a copy of the syllabus or the outline from the course. So I have a BS in emergency management. It will not count for anything. Depends on whether that's your only BS or whether you have more than one degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree. If the bachelor's degree is in emergency management, you have 2 years, 1 year less emergency management experience, but then you cannot use it for your training. Your training will have to be from other than that degree. If you have another degree, you can use it for your degree. Then your emergency management one will reduce your emergency management training depending how long ago it was. So read through the application. There are opportunities for that to be helpful. For some people, it's very helpful. For others, not so much. And we've got about 1 minute. Let me see if I got time for one more. In the symposium, counted under one category, or is it by topic? Could you have a symposium that has 2 hours of control and command and 2 hours of general management? Yes, absolutely. I mean, you go to a conference or symposium that has different topics, you can split it up. Remember, you just have to validate it. How many hours for each that you attended? And it looks like I still got about a minute. I have a bachelor degree in criminal justice with concentration in emergency management and homeland security. I am now working on my master's degree in emergency management. Can I use my master's classes as training courses since I have the bachelor's already? Yes, you can. But again, transcript or that shows you completed the course, and syllabus that shows what the course was about, and then it's emergency management or general management related. Does support to a Stafford Act declaration count? Depends on what you want to use it for. For training, no. For part of a real-world event that's elsewhere in the application and we're not discussing today, or for a contribution, professional contribution also, which we didn't discuss today, possibly. And that's all the questions I have, and we are just at the end of our hour. Hope I got a lot of information out to you. I know I put a bunch out there. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to revisit it. Staff has worked through and will copy all the questions and answers. I highly recommend you become an AEM or CEM. It's the gold standard for our profession. I am unbelievably proud of my designation. We barely have, we're still, I think, a little under 2,000 in the world. Everybody out there needs to get after it and get it done and show the professionalism of emergency management in the U.S. and in the world. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.